Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And I'm Ted Bannock, and I love talking about cards.
Well, Grant, let's continue our little discussion, this time with Ted. Ted, welcome back. You were at Gen Con while we were recording some of our guarded card episodes.
Hey, guys. I went on a there and back again journey to Indianapolis.
Right. It's good to know that you were arrived safe and got home safe. So, welcome back.
No car troubles or traffic wasn't so bad. Thanks. Yeah.
That's good.
Well, I've been on a lot of running around recently, but now I'm starting to get back and settled, which is good.
That's good. And so to give you a little bit of background, the viewer here is that a fan reached out to us and said, "Hey guys, can you talk about guarded cards?" And so Grant and I hadn't really talked about guarded cards before this. And Ted, you're new to the whole show. I don't know when I'm going to stop calling you new to the show, but nonetheless, like you're you haven't the majority of those. Like we haven't talked about any of those guarded cards with you. Mm-hmm. So Grant and I and Ted, we all thought it was a great idea to talk about the guarded cards and
Absolutely.
whether we like them. And so we've talked about Bilbo and a couple of the other attachments. So Grant, what are we going to talk about in this episode?
We're talking about the one-cost spirit attachment from the Fate of Wilderland, the Mithril Shirt. It is guarded by Mithril. Guarded by a location attached to a hero. When attached hero is dealt any amount of damage, reduce that amount by 1.
Yeah.
If there was, it was of silver steel, which the elves called mithril, and with it went a belt of pearls and crystals.
That's the
Flavor text.
The flavor text there from The Hobbit. Yeah. And so, I mean, this is the Mithril Shirt.
This is the Mithril Shirt.
The Mithril Shirt, the one that
Is it unique?
It is unique.
Okay, I thought so.
So, okay, Ted, what do you think of the Mithril Shirt specifically? And then eventually we'll talk about guarded cards, but what do you think of this card?
So for a one-cost attachment that reduces damage, that's certainly excellent. It being in Spirit has a lot of great defenders we've seen in this cycle. We've seen Dane, so he's a great target. Spirit Baragond also comes to mind, so he would be great to wear the shirt. Does this have the armor keyword?
It has armor, artifact, and item.
Okay, so that's pretty good. That means it being an armor, you can also combo it with the tactics event Sterner Than Steel, which you can exhaust the armor you're wearing to cancel a shadow effect if you have a tactics. So those keywords on it are pretty great.
Yeah.
And stopping a damage, I mean, that could be anything. It could be archery damage or damage from a treachery, right? It's just response exhaust to cancel any damage. Is that what you said, Grant?
No, it's just response when attached hero is dealt any amount of damage, reduce that amount by 1.
Holy cripes. So it's way better than I thought. You don't even have to exhaust it. So that means you could exhaust it for Sterner Than Steel and still have it canceling damage every packet you take. That card, that's bonkers, actually.
Yeah.
That's really good.
As long as you have readying effects. Now, is the one damage... okay, let me focus here because I have a million questions that I want to ask both of you.
All right.
Okay. Other than Sterner Than Steel, is there anything that specifically triggers off of the armor attachment?
Yes.
Okay, so, and that would make sense playing with Mithril Shirt. What are those things?
If it's armor traded, you can fetch it with Open the Armory, which is a neutral card.
Okay. And that's the top 10, right?
Yeah, you search the top 10 cards of your deck for an armor or weapon traded item and put it to your hand. So if you're only playing Mono Spirit, you can still play this card and you have a way to get it with a neutral card.
Right.
If it's in the top 10.
Right. Any other things that trigger off of this? I asked because when we talked about Sting is as a weapon, and so you can trigger Goblin Cleaver, Foe Hammer, like all of those card, like it seems like there's weapons that trigger things more often than armor triggers things. Was that roughly true, you think?
Yeah, I'd say so. Because up until recently, there wasn't much in the way of armor attachments.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had the Citadel plate,
right, from the core set.
Yeah,
ring mail, elven mail, ancestral armor, raiment of war. I don't know if the shields count as armor or not, but
yes, they do.
I think so.
So
there's really not too much armor interaction other than those two cards. Baragon, Tactics Baragon interacts with armor, but because by reducing its cost, but because you're not playing this card on him directly, there's no way for that to interaction to happen. So you're still paying the 1, even if you're running Tactics Baragon.
Well, does the hot second rule apply to this?
I think the hot second rule only applied to well-equipped. Or if you did the Valor action off of Open the Armory.
Okay. Where you get to put it into play immediately.
But then you're putting it into play, not paying the cost anyway.
Right. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I think the guarded keywords, I'd have to look up the rules, you have to pay to play them specifically to the staging area.
Right. Okay, so that's the armor keyword, and the artifact keyword isn't too good. The Ring of Barahir triggers off of the artifact keyword, but
also a good point, David. Absolutely. So,
but I mean,
which is in the same sphere too.
Yes, which is in the same sphere, but there's not a much that triggers off the artifact keyword either. But then there's the item, so Dale Dex and Long Lake Trader and all those things, right? You can trade them around.
Yeah. Is it attached to a hero, Grant?
Yes.
It is attached to a hero, yes.
Okay, but you could attach it to a Dale hero. I mean, it's just in general, it's an attachment and trigger, leadership brand,
right.
And draw a card. Yeah, the item, I mean, it's still an attachment, so it's susceptible to... The thing is about the guarded cards in general is they're just regular attachments. So there's nothing stopping a shadow card, that says
attachment or all
discard an attachment you control on the defending character. And if you only have the Mithril Shirt, all that work you did to get the guarded card is gone.
Right. So, I mean, in terms of the keywords, it seems like the keywords are fine, right? I mean, there's not anything crazy that we're missing with the keywords.
No.
What about guarded location? The fact that it's the only guarded card that says guarded location. Grant? Go ahead, Grant.
I haven't got a problem with the fact that it's a guarded location. You had Sting, which was a guarded enemy. The rest of them were guarded location or enemy. So I haven't really got a problem with them diversifying some of the guarded cards between enemy and location, because of the fact that it splits it up. So you're not just going to get swarmed with one or the other. You're going to have a nice even mix.
Yeah, I like that it's a specific to a location.
Yeah.
Well, I don't necessarily love it thematically. Like, hey, I'm just wandering around the forest of Mirkwood and I trip over the Mithril Shirt, But having said that, I think
for the armory of Erebor and you trip over.
right. Whatever it is. I don't necessarily love it thematically, but I think for gameplay it's perfect because there's one that's guarded enemy and now there's one that's guarded location. And Ted, what's your input on this?
In general, I dislike guarded cards, so I'll put that disclaimer out there when I'm reviewing all of these. I have a bias. I'm skewed one direction. But this one, to me, is the most playable because a location, it being specific, just like Sting is, and it being a location, since it's one or the other, you know when you're playing, when you're playing it, like, oh, I can handle an extra location being put out this turn.
Right. And then, but you may not be able to do it if it's location or enemy or whatever, like, because you don't know, you can't predict.
Right. You could do things like, all right, I'm going to put out a location, and you could have a card in your hand like Backtrack. Backtrack is the 1-cost spirit event that lets you take progress from the quest card and move it onto a location, I think, in the staging. So you could set up a combo like, I'm going to play Mithril Shirt, and then I'm going to backtrack and take 4 progress and just immediately complete the location,
Right.
So that makes it much more playable to me.
What's your beef against guarded cards, though? Let's get into this a little bit.
Sure. Primarily my mode of play is 2-player. And then I do sometimes get to do multiplayer, and my general thought is encounter cards are bad.
I think I don't know about probably you guys, everybody's general thought.
Encounter cards are bad. Especially, do you think they're bad?
Especially those one with threat on them.
Right. Like,
or the word treachery, right?
I've built decks that are entirely focused around reducing encounter cards that come out by playing cards like Gildor's Council and A Shadow in the Past, Hidden Way.
Right, Hidden Way was the one that I was thinking of.
Lets you do some manipulation.
Then there's the allies that do those things too, right? Like, hey, if it's an enemy, get rid of it, or like.
Right. Things, right. So I do whatever I can to reduce the amount of encounter cards coming off of the deck. Because even in a standard 2-player game, sometimes the deck will surge, and all of a sudden you're buried in cards, And now I have this guarded card in my hand, which I'm going to play it, and it's going to spawn another card, and that guarded card in my hand could be a different tool to unbury me. It could be, something that boosts my attack to handle an enemy, or it could be something that will help me clear a location. It'll help me against the encounter deck instead of spawning another one. And in 2-player and multiplayer especially, when you're getting 4 cards a turn, and you're going to be like, let's add another card.
Well, I mean,
but solo play is very different. Solo play, you can be like, well, I could probably handle a location, plus an extra card.
Well, I was going to say, like, isn't that my argument for guarded cards was that if you're revealing 6 or 7 cards with surges and things like that, what's one more card? Like, that's only
if you're
12%.
Already drowning,
right? Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if
you're already wet, just jump in the water.
Yeah, who's that comedian? He said, you know what it's like to have 5 kids? He said, imagine that you're drowning holding 7 cinder blocks, and you're under the water, and you have to hold those cinder blocks, and you're just sitting there drowning, and then somebody hands you a baby. It's like Jim Gaffigan. He's like, that's what having 5 kids feels like. But, like, I say that for, guarded cards. Like, you're playing it during planning phase, right? Unless you're going to reforge, which you can then play it whenever you want. But I don't know, like, have you played guarded cards enough to know that the extra card is just, or are you just like, I don't want to play guarded cards?
I would like to. I've been going through a mode where I'm trying to play cards that I initially don't want to play. Because I do firmly believe that every card is good. Like, every card in the card pool has a use. And these guarded cards are strong. You get to play them, and if you free them up, they can have a tremendous impact, in the amount your deck can do. So I haven't yet put them on the table, but for that reason. But I'm going to make an effort
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Ted. I'm just saying, like, because I don't play multiplayer enough at all to really understand the dynamics of a 4-player game. So, to me, it seems like if I'm going to reveal 7 cards because of surges and things like that, 1 extra card may not be such a
I think they're much more viable in solo, but even in a 2-player game where I'm flipping over 2 cards anyway, and there could be a surge, or depending on the scenario, you might have to flip extra card. You might be faced with a question of I think it was Ghost of Framsburg, where you had to on the second or third stage, you had to raise your threat by 2 or flip an extra card.
Right.
In scenarios like that, unless you're really, really far ahead of the encounter deck, where you just are running the board state, it's hard to throw an extra card on the table. At
that point, you probably don't even need the shirt if you're that far ahead of the.
I think they're immensely powerful. And this one I think is probably the most it's 1, so it's a good cost, and its ability is great, soaking up damage for your defender or soaking up archery damage from treacheries. Yep. And it being a location, there are plenty of scenarios where locations hurt you. There's locations that they penalize you for playing event cards, or if you had an extra location, their threat can build over time, right? Like they start low, but the longer you leave them on the table, they go up. And I don't know. Counter cards are bad. They're bad. They're bad.
You want to see all the player cards on the table, but you don't want to see all the encounter cards on the table.
Yeah,
especially at one time, right?
With guarded.
If you want to see some decent 3-player gameplay where we'll try and get some guarded cards out, take a look at the experimental deck building that me and Samuel did a few months ago, where me partner and Sam took several quests, and we had some guarded cards in there. We didn't always get them out on the table, but we had a discussion about when it was the best time to play it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it is you have to look at the board state and decide when it's right to play the cards. You can't just have it in your hand and say, right, I'm going to play it, because it might ruin the entire game. You've got to actually sit down and think about it. Is it worth it playing it now, or should I just wait and play it in a couple of turns?
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, so the Mithril Shirt. Let's go back to the Mithril Shirt and talk about its response. This is the big thing, right? And so it says when attached to a hero, when attached heroes dealt any damage, reduce that damage by 1. Okay, Ted, you said it's big. Grant, what do you think?
I think it's amazing. If you think about it, you're getting assigned. Let's take one of the earlier quests from the core set or the Shadows of Mirkwood, where you're getting slammed with treachery damage, like a Necromancer's Reach or the Evil Storm, that deals points of damage here and there. This just cancels out that entire damage. Or if you're taking points of archery from a Goblin Sniper, it cancels it out because it reduces the cost of that damage by 1. Yeah. I think when they come to re-look at this card, I'll be surprised if they don't have it as a limited response, either once per phase or once. Or something like that, because it is so powerful.
I think that's its biggest redeeming quality, is it's the fact that you don't exhaust it. I thought you'd exhaust it, but you don't. So you can just use as much as you want.
Exactly. And with it being a guarded location, it's easier to get out than, say, a guarded enemy, because there is so much in the way of location control.
Yeah, you can, and it's in the sphere with the location control too, right?
Right.
It's like tactics with guarded enemies.
This is a great card too for the hero Halden, because there are sometimes you might be burning through locations, and you might want to spawn more locations. And this is a card for Halden that will actually spawn a location.
Right. Like the Pathless Dunedain or whatever, the Dunedain Pathfinder.
Oh, yeah, he also spawns
Right.
location as well.
Right.
So you could have a real crazy deck. For your first turn, I'm going to do Dunedain Pathfinder and drop Mithril Shirt, and we're going to put 2 extra cards on the table.
All right. Yeah, 2 extra. Yay! Let's do it.
Dunedain Hunter, you get an enemy,
Right.
and you're like, well, I just got 3 encounter cards, but I have other player cards on the table, so that's good, right?
Right. Yeah, I have to just throw in, like, I may have been swayed by you guys. When I looked at the Mithril Shirt, to reduce that amount of damage by 1, I didn't initially see the benefit of it. Actually, I pulled it out of a deck that I could easily put this into. Like a Haldan, Golem, Spirit Glorfindel deck that just explores locations all the time. And I pulled it out. I was like, I'm not going to need it. But I think I may. Like, I think that it may work itself out because there's not a lot of defense in that deck. Actually, Smeagol is the one that has the most defense. He's got 2 defense. Haldan has 1, and Spirit Glorfindel only has 1 too. So it's so maybe that's that. I don't know. So that you think that response is super powerful, huh?
It is powerful. It's just whether or not you're going to be able to use it, get it out correctly and at the right time. Because if you're playing Nightmare, which I'm not sure if you guys play Nightmare or not.
I have the first couple cycles at least.
Ted's already talking about pulling out extra cards, and you're like, let's play Nightmare now.
Yeah.
Pull out even more harder cards.
Yeah. Well, I've got to say that I have played with Mithril Shirt in Nightmare Journey Along the Anduin.
My goodness. Did you pull out I think I know where this is going.
I pulled Gladden Marshland.
The Gladden Marshlands, which is a 10 threat, 10
right.
quest
I
point
did
location.
have an answer for it. A shortcut to mushrooms.
Oh.
So I shuffled back in the Gladden Marshland and got a different location.
Okay.
Yeah. So again,
the Mariner's
of all
Compass is a good way to get rid of locations that are guarding things too.
Yeah.
Because you take the location off of. You make this the active location. You make Mariner's Compass. You put it in the deck, and then you get another one out and put that one in the active location. Like, you free up the guarded card there without even exploring the location.
Yeah, but there's a lot of ways of doing it, and I like this card. I think it's very thematic. I like the fact that it's not restricted as well.
Oh, that's a really good point, Grant. Thank you. That's a good observation. It's also non-restricted, so you still get to have your 2 restricted attachments on your defender if that's who's wearing this.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is immensely, So it is strong in that regard.
So, for example, if you're running it on Baragon, you can have his spear and his shield, plus the fact of negating 1 point of damage every time. That is insane.
Well, I guess I'm going to have to go take this and put this into that deck then and see how well it works.
Yeah, I think of the guarded cards, this is probably the first one I would be really willing to try.
Yeah,
It's the entrance way to guarded cards.
It's the gateway.
A nice, easy location.
Right.
In some scenarios,
easy location.
Well, some scenarios, locations are helpful. I recently played through Fate of the Wilderland, and there are locations in that one called the Dwarven Watchtower,
right,
which
are
only
super
helps
nice.
you.
Right.
It only helps you. So if you actually get a Dwarven Watchtower to spawn on one of these,
right,
that's really great.
Right. Exactly.
So in those scenarios, it has extra value.
Right.
Okay, we're ready to ring this thing?
I think we should try to ring this guy. Ted, you ready?
So our ring system is from 1 to 10, but a Mithril Shirt, isn't it like 1,000 tiny rings linked together? So I ring this card as 1,000.
Oh, are we gonna ring it on a different scale this time? Is that what?
Yeah, on a Mithril Shirt scale.
Okay. Okay, so whatever Ted says, forget that, and then I'm the boss. We're gonna do what I say. Okay. So for those people who are new to the show or have forgotten, we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we ring the cards on a scale from 1 to 10, Ted. 1 to 10. And where 1 is the best card in the game, it's the one card to rule them all. And a 10 means we toss the card back into the chasm from whence it was made. So who wants to go first? Good. I'll go first.
Go, great.
Yeah. So Mithril Shirt is a card that this was actually the card that I least wanted to play with, as opposed to Ted, who wanted to play this the most. Although I do like that it fits into that into some of those archetypes a little bit better because of the guarded location, and that it's in Spirit, which has all those get rid of locations sort of stuff. So I think, though, that I still have to stick with this guarded attachment as probably 5 rings. So I'm gonna rate it just slightly worse than Sting, because I love my hobbits and I love my my Bilbo attachments. So
well, this can go perfectly on Bilbo.
Yeah, well, it's designed, right? It's supposed to. But
yeah.
Grant, what do you got to say?
Well, I like the card. I've played with it a few times. The effect is phenomenal. I'm giving it a 3 rings.
3 rings. Okay. Ted?
Strong.
Ted, what do you think?
So my biased opinion of not liking guarded cards, I was going to give it a 6 and move it down, just because generally, I mean, if you want armor that stops damage, this one does it hands down, and it does it in multiple ways. But just guarded cards for me in general, the fact that you always have to fight for it,
right,
makes it tough to play. But the fact that it's a location, also knowing what it is and when you can expect a location, that gives it a lot of extra value for me.
Right. Okay, well, that wraps up our discussion of Mithril Shirt. Join us next time as we talk about more cards in the game. Have a great day, everybody. And if you're interested in finding this or any of our back episodes of Card Talk, feel free to search YouTube, where you can find our flagship video episodes with the username Card Talk 2018. Or you can search the RSS feed, cardtalk2018.libsyn.org, for our extended audio versions of our podcast. Or you can find us on Facebook at Card Talk 2018. And if you have any questions for Grant or myself, or for both of us, feel free to email us at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.